Welcome to Not What I Thought. I'm Erica.
I'm Yolanda.
And I'm Becca. We're therapists, entrepreneurs, and perfectly imperfect humans.
We first met during a business owner retreat where we became fast friends because we're not afraid to be real and ask the hard questions about life. What we thought it would be like, how messy it actually is, and the courage it takes to create the life we want.
We continue to build our friendship and personal growth through our own retreats. We find the deepest connection in sharing our struggles and finding what we have in common rather than what divides us.
We're breaking down hard topics on our podcast and together have conversations about what it takes to find real talk, real support, and real rest for professional women. We're glad you're here. Join us on your favorite podcast platform.
So, welcome everybody. And today we have Sofia joining us. Hi, Sofia.
Hello.
It's great to meet you. I know that a lot of our audience, well, I will speak for myself. I know that I am really interested to hear your not what I thought story. So go ahead and tell us what it is. What's the topic that you're bringing for us for today?
Sure. So I'm an intimacy coach, I'm a sex coach, and I work primarily with parents. And I think, the big not what I thought for me, even as someone educated as a sex therapist, like I did
Mhm,
my training before I had my babies.
mhm,
Um, I definitely went through a period of just expecting my libido and my sex life to like bounce back after kids, right? That there
mhm,
would just be this magic moment where I got through the breastfeeding, or everyone was sleeping through the night, or we hit some kind of imaginary stasis
mhm,
where my desire for intimacy would just blossom and return, and things would go back to normal in our sex life. And of course, that was not the case, as it is
mhm,
not the case for many, many women that I work with and many couples that I work with. And of course, that creates a lot of frustration. It creates a lot of tension in our relationships. It creates this sense of like failure within ourselves,
mhm,
or like a battle with our own body about why it's not cooperating and doing the thing we want it to do.
mhm,
And when I talk to people, and for myself too, like it creates a lot of pain and like loneliness and disconnection in your relationship as well.
mhm,
So yeah.
So I'm curious, you said even with all of my training, right? Because
mhm,
you've done training before having kids, like what did you learn in training? Because
Hmm.
I can see there being different layers, right? Like someone who doesn't have training as a sex therapist or intimacy coach
Yeah.
might have one set of expectations that's like, oh, well, you're going to have the baby and then sex life will just go back to normal, right? And then
Yeah.
you probably had a different set of expectations because you'd been like educated, right? So I'm just curious,
Hmm.
what was that sort of gap between maybe what a common person, the lay
Yeah.
person would think and what you had learned?
So I think on one level, even though you know it, there still can be an expectation anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was partially at play. I would definitely say, the reality with my second baby, I was diagnosed
mhm,
with Hashimoto's, but I didn't know
mhm,
I had it for at
mhm.
least a year.
Oh.
And so there was an extra layer of like less beyond no libido that I didn't have with my
Mhm,
first. So with my first kid, I was able to do the maintenance sex thing where it was like, okay, we'll just tap each other on the shoulder once a month. We'll do it. It won't be glamorous, but we'll both be
mhm,
glad we did.
mhm,
And that worked really well for me after baby number one. And then baby number two came around, and that approach was actually causing damage in the sense that it was making
mhm,
me feel very like I felt really not good after we had sex.
mhm,
And I have a partner who's attuned to that, and we could have conversations about that, but like even just the basic sort of like survival mode sex was like not working for me. And I think certainly one of my evolutions as like a sex therapist and an intimacy coach, or like a sex coach, is I think at that time I was like really heavily focused on like root cause. Let's find the reason this is not happening. Is it a mental load, like resentment thing in the relationship?
Mhm.
Is it a physical hormone thing? Do I need to get my hormone panel checked? Is it a sleep thing? Is it a trauma thing around me and my vagina? Is it a painful intercourse thing? And I don't discount that because those things are important. And at the time, anyways, I found like so much of that can be revolutionary for people where there's lots of reasons they don't even realize. Like, is it an identity thing where all of
Mhm.
a sudden this narrative that I didn't even know existed within myself appears because now I'm a mother, and mothers are not sexual beings.
Mm.
Mothers cannot be sexual and motherly in the same breath, right? So I think there's a piece of that. And then part of what I've evolved and like unpacked was when we focus on that kind of approach, there's always a reason not to
Mhm.
have a libido or not to have sex. And I'm not ever advocating that we force through or push through. There are times where there's just going to be a break. And also we can hide behind all that stuff
Mhm.
instead of doing what I do now, which is just like embracing the body that I have now and working with the body that I have now, whether my hormones are messed or not, whether I'm sleeping through the night or not,
Mhm.
and finding a way forward that works for me and my partner right now. So that doesn't quite directly answer your question, I guess, but
Mhm.
I would say I used to be very focused on like root cause
Yeah.
in a different kind of way than I am now, sort of going, okay, like how do we work with what is happening to create something that's going to work and create cause less pain for both of us
Yeah.
and less frustration for both of us.
Was there a
Can
part of that that was um maybe extra frustrating for you because you're like, but I know all of these things. Like I somehow should be able to figure my way through it, or this shouldn't happen to
Mhm.
me because I have all this knowledge. Or like, I know sometimes
For
well,
as therapists,
sure.
right? Like couples
Yeah.
therapists, it's like we feel extra shame when we have problems in our relationship because we're
Oh, yeah.
supposed to be the expert on, yeah.
Totally. Yeah,
well,
I
and
would
can I
definitely
piggyback on that
say, go
question?
ahead,
So,
Yolanda, go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just curious, like, to Becca's point, I'm wondering that list of questions that you just went down, is that your professional list of questions that you kind of you're checking the box? And so, yeah, were you kind of doing that in a way for yourself as you,
For sure, for
yeah.
sure. And that's where I was coming up short a bit. Like my
Hmm.
partner and I had done a lot of work on mental load and the
Hmm.
balance in our relationship. And so that wasn't at play. And, I was in the midst of figuring out what was happening with my body. And that helped a lot, but it didn't, my Hashimoto's is close to remission, but it's not like I'm raging hot and horny all the time. It's really the tools that I've implemented that are what's helped me to have a great sex life in this era. Um, I would argue for sure sleep is just always a thing, sleep and stress. And sometimes that means we're in the period, especially in the early years. Like, I don't tend to work specifically in my group coaching program, anyways, with parents that are like in the 1 to 3 year old zone
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
it is just going to be less frequent in that zone. It is just less important in a lot of ways, in my opinion, in that zone. And that's when we come up with these agreements that work, whether it's like blowjob Thursdays, I joke about, or like my
Hmm.
partner and I had like, the sex once a month. Um, what I found through getting curious about what was showing up for me after a lot of like, oh, I'm back to where I was in my 20s, rolling over after sex and like wanting to curl up in a ball and cry because I just feel so disconnected with what happened through no
Hmm.
fault of like my partner.
Hmm.
And we had to have a moment where, and maybe this is another level of not what I thought. Um, like I was suffering silently for a long time without letting him know that it was like that. And then I actually held this summit in 2024, so a couple years ago now, where it just go organizing the summit and telling my partner about what was happening through the summit and, walking my own walk, of course. I just got brave enough to say, like, this is not working for me. And I think actually I need like less frequent, but more novel and more deep experiences than like
Mm.
semi-regular, but like shallow experiences that are kind of on the maintenance sex side. And through that, we were able to go, okay, so like this is the third era of our intimate life. This is what's working now. It's very different than what worked after baby number one. It's very different than what worked after my stepson joined my life, and that's okay. And now that my youngest is 4, like we're entering a new level of that. And so I'm always telling people like it's your sex life is not this static thing, your libido is not this static thing, and it can't be because your body's changing constantly, your sense of identity is changing constantly, and your relationship to your partner is changing constantly, and all three of those things are going to affect your libido and your sexual connection.
Mm. And how do you for yourself, Sophia, come to the updated version of what works for you?
I mean, I think partially it's an organic thing, but partially it's definitely a matter of like conversation. I mean, so an example of an organic thing would be I stumbled upon Bridgerton quite by accident in the sense that I saw the trailers and thought it was like a feminist period piece with no notion of what the books were about and like absolutely no clue this was like a romance novel situation. So I
Mm,
started watching it and then I was like, oh my God, okay, cool. Like, not normally my jam, but all right.
mm,
And I watched the whole first season by myself and then I introduced it to my partner for the second season because I was like, hey, this is kind of fun. And we just like entered this, like, we called it our fling because, like, all of a sudden it was
mm,
like more than once in a day or like a couple of times in a week, which was like not
mhm,
our norm. And so there was something about watching that show together that created this baseline of flirtation and connection
mm,
for us
mhm, mhm,
that shifted the dynamic. And then the show ended and like we maintained that for a little while, but then it sort of petered out. And so that was like an example of something organically just kind of shifting for us.
mhm,
And then there's been times where it's been much more like, you know, my partner came home with the handcuffs and I was like, oh, actually, like that worked exceptionally well for me. And so there's
mhm,
constantly what I'm advocating for with people is this like growth mindset to sex per se, where you're constantly revising the manual of
mhm,
what works, noticing, observing, not letting failures hold you back, but going like, okay, what didn't work about that? Oh, okay, like the quickies are not working for you, or like, all
mhm,
right, so like, what if we try something else? And creating kind of this like iterative environment where we're both willing to talk about it and experiment it, which unfortunately is probably most of the people I talk to's like biggest struggle
mhm,
is even being able to like speak about their sex life,
mhm.
like about it as a topic, like work, like
Yeah. Yeah.
like childcare.
Mhm,
And being able to do that is what allows you to decide what's working and figure out what's working. Because I also find a lot of people get really stuck, right? Male partners go, just tell me what you need. And
mhm,
female partners are like, I don't know. And if I did, I would tell you.
mhm,
And so they just get stuck at this standstill.
I have a question about this. So I love this idea of like, we stumbled upon Bridgerton and it was fun. Or my partner brought home handcuffs and I was like, actually, yes, that sounds great, right? Um, and I can envision, and okay, so you're giving us examples of like we tried things and it was really fun and like that worked.
Yeah.
But then you also mentioned failures, right? Because I can imagine a scenario where a partner brings home handcuffs and the other one is like, absolutely
Nope.
not. How could you even think this, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
I'm game and we try it and it like didn't work, and then that sort
Yeah.
of like can contribute to a sense of discouragement or failure or shame around the whole thing. And I'm wondering
Yeah.
if you have like ideas about how people can deal with the like we tried something and it didn't work. The
mhm,
sort of
Totally.
failures, right? Like how do we
mhm,
keep
Yeah.
ourselves in a place where this is hopeful, we learn from it and not like, yeah.
Yes. So two big things there, I would say. One is I don't find people like we all go into sex with a lot of expectation and almost the performance of perfection rather than this attitude of like experimentation and play. And so
Mhm.
one way that you can do that is you don't necessarily need to do that like every single time. But let's say you're bringing home something new for your partner to try. Before you go in the bedroom, like set the intention that tonight is an experimentation night.
Mhm.
We're going to try a recipe for the first time.
Mhm.
That means we're going to be reading the recipe book over and over and over. And we're going to do things in the wrong order. And they might be kind of weird. And the souffle might be undercooked. And like that doesn't mean we're bad cooks. It just means we've never cooked this thing before. So when you go in with the intention of like, we're just here to see how this goes, instead of, I brought home this thing and it's going to be amazing, when we lower the expectations at the outset, the failure, like the pierce, I guess, of failure, the hurt of the failure doesn't sting as bad because we didn't go in with, oh my God, this is going to solve all our problems. We went in with like, let's see how this works, right? So that's like the first level of that, is just allowing yourselves, I call them like sexploration dates. So the intention is not for everything to be amazing. The intention is to try this thing and to take what we can learn from it. The second thing is, I have this model for sex, and people always skip phase 4, which is what I call the debrief. And I'm not saying we
Mhm.
need to like talk for 2 hours every time we have sex afterwards, but my husband and I have gotten a lot better at like, oh, hey, like it took us a little while to get there, but when we finally figured out that position, that like really worked.
Mhm.
Or, oh my goodness, you are way more sensitive in your luteal. Like when you like, painful intercourse always happens to us when you're in your luteal. So there's
Mhm.
this habit of like observation and stating out loud, like those two things that happened today were worked really well, or that thing was kind of hard, and if we're going to try it again, could we do XYZ, or I would like to not try that again for a while.
Mhm.
And again, we're just normalizing this organic observation. And like some people I encourage, like maybe you can keep a journal or something where you're noting this stuff, but you're just normalizing this idea of feedback, not as like a performance review, but as a joint learning project,
Mhm.
as a team that's like working on an experiment and is needing to like collect data about what's working and not working. So it's not always easy, but a lot of it has to do with dropping this idea of the perfect lover somehow just like coming out of the box, and instead accepting that the only way to be a great lover is to learn. And that means embracing failure and the lessons that come from it, instead of like avoiding it or shutting it down and scuttling awkward away from it when it happens.
Yeah.
I love that. So, do you have particular ways that you help yourself, that you have helped yourself, or that you help your clients to get over or to navigate through the discomfort
Mm-hmm.
of having these conversations?
I mean, I would say two things. Like, I definitely remember after second baby, and maybe it was because I was in the middle of putting that summit together, but I had to have the moment of like, the pain of not talking about this is
Hmm.
harder than the fear of talking
Hmm.
about it. And so sometimes we do have to hit that moment of like, I have to be real with myself that like avoiding this is causing me a lot of discomfort and probably more discomfort than just ripping the band-aid off.
Hmm.
And then I think the other piece is always the, I mean, I call it inevitable, but it's like, the lesson you have to learn all the time about like that hard conversation you're avoiding. And then when you finally have it, no
Hmm.
matter the outcome,
Hmm.
you feel 10 times better
Hmm.
because you're not cycling in your own stuff. And
Hmm.
hopefully, if it goes well, you're feeling seen by this person. And so, I don't know if you think of like a breakup you've been putting off, like whether the relationship ends in a breakup or not almost doesn't matter. You feel better when you finally like say the
Hmm.
thing. But also, and I guess just that momentum of like that positive feedback loop of like, when we do talk about it, things get better and we are learning
Hmm.
things and they are improving. So that's part of it. Part of it is that, I have a framework that I've learned through my certification body around giving feedback.
Mm,
And it's particular to like during intimacy, but I think it can be used anytime. And
mhm,
there's a whole 5-part framework, but two of the places that I get people to start are to share what's working and to share what you want more of, because those two
mhm,
things are not criticisms.
mhm,
And
mhm,
they're only going to be well received by your partner if you're like,
mhm,
I really like it when we spend the extra time to like warm me up,
mhm,
and I would love it if, we could do more massage or more oral or more whatever.
mhm,
So that can be like an approachable starting point, and then you get more comfortable doing that, and then you can allow yourself to venture into so that thing you do like doesn't actually really work very, very well for me.
mhm,
The last thing I'll say on here too is it's also kind of a mindset piece, in particular when we're thinking about during the act itself. I always remind people two things. One, sex is a team sport.
mm,
So if you're watching soccer players on the pitch who are just like fluidly moving together, it's not because they never talk. And even though they might not be talking now, they spent a lot of time talking and over communicating as a new team.
mhm,
And so, yeah, you might have been with your partner for a long time, but if things have drastically changed, you have to up the communication level, almost like you have to imagine the soccer team got a new player, and then you can like lower it once things are feeling good again. But we need to go through these waves of like over communicating and then relaxing into a routine that works. So that's one. Two is your partner quite simply does not have the same skin, the same
mm,
eyeballs, the same taste buds. Like they do not experience the world on a physiological level the same as you. And so you just have to think of yourself as like a translator for your body. Your partner has no clue how their hands feel on your skin unless you say your hands feel rough. And especially if we're dealing with like perimenopause, like maybe your partner's hands feel great today and then tomorrow they feel like sandpaper. And that has nothing to do with anything your partner has done and everything to do with just like how your body's showing up today.
mhm,
And when we can all just take it a little bit less personally and just be like, hey, I'm just translating for what my body needs today, it just eases the load a little bit and reminds us that like our partner can drive blind and we can be mad at them for driving in the wrong direction,
mhm,
or we can give them some direction.
I loved that idea of like the soccer team and that maybe we got a
mhm,
new player because sometimes the new player is a new baby. Sometimes it's hormonal
Mhm.
changes. Sometimes it's a medical diagnosis. Like there are so many things that like we are now have to like account for.
Mhm.
And if we can consider that without shame, just like very practical, like, oh, we have to figure out now what it looks like for us to score goals when we have a
Yeah.
new, factor in here, then it's like, oh, okay, it's kind of destigmatizing that like nothing is wrong, nobody's like causing this when no one's doing it
Yeah.
to the other person. It's like we just have a different, we get to be creative,
Nobody's
right?
broken, or there's
Yeah.
just often this like, oh my, there's so much pressure to be a great lover, but to magically
mhm,
be a great lover, and you're
mhm,
like, the actual skills for being a really great lover is going to ask you what you need. They're going to ask you how it's feeling in your body. They're going to like
mhm,
solicit that feedback or offer it. They're not going to assume they know anything about you. They are going to put their full effort into like learning how your body works today, right now, in this moment. They're not trying to be some guy from a romance novel like magically, And so a lot of it's about shifting like what does it actually mean to be a good lover? What is that skill set? Because we're not born 5 seal red chefs. What is it called? Red seal, yeah, 5-star red seal chefs. Yeah, we expect that of ourselves with
mhm,
intimacy. And kind of, back to the team analogy, like I joke, but I'm kind of serious. Like most of us have fairly mediocre intimacy skills. Most of us do. And most of us, even if we're fairly satisfied with our sex lives, could be experiencing a lot more.
mhm,
And then a baby comes, or a body change happens, or an illness, or a major job stress. And all of a sudden, your mediocre skills are not helping you anymore. They're not
mhm,
getting you through the hard stuff. And then people go, well, I'm broken and it's over, and I guess we're never going to have sex again. And you're like, actually, you just need to learn some new skills. This is like
Mm,
95% a skill issue, which literally is not your fault because nobody taught you how to keep the spark
right.
alive 10 years and 3 kids in high school. They
Mhm.
didn't even tell you the full anatomy of your own body. Like,
Right.
so we have to stop internalizing that failure and just decide, if we want our sex life to be as good as it can be, what skills do we need to learn to get there? Because it's totally possible.
Mm,
I love that. Well, I love a lot of the analogies that you use, but kind of taking it into a more practical sense, right? But also like using Bridgerton, which I was curious if you're a fan of Bridgerton because you said in Bloom, but like 2 sentences
Yeah.
into your story, and I was like, I think she watches Bridgerton. But um, no, I really like this idea that we can use like things to bring in fun or fantasy or like new ideas or like a flirtation or
Mm-hmm.
like sharing that just interest with your husband, right? Your partner. And then,
Yeah.
okay, but actually, they started intercourse like 5 seconds in, and that's not really how it works either, right? So like what do
right.
we need to
Totally.
do like, between the two of us?
Yeah.
And that's
I'm
really cool.
such a fan of romance novels in a new way lately. And also, they 100% like porn fuel for women in particular. I find like the biggest myth is this expectation or hope that your partner's just this magic mind reader.
Mhm.
And when he doesn't operate the way the guy from the romance novel does, or when your sex scene doesn't play out that perfectly and smoothly,
Mhm.
you want to blame it on him for like not being good enough. Or that can be one tendency. Or we blame it on ourselves in a different way when we're kind of at war with our bodies, which is really where this whole journey started for me, right? Like I spent my
Mhm.
20s struggling with orgasm and constantly having pain during intercourse, and I was like, why aren't you cooperating with me, vagina?
Mhm.
And that's a whole other story.
Mhm.
But we have to be careful of like the myths, again, like that waiting for my libido to come back. It's like only good sex only starts if I look at you from across the room and desperately need to rip your clothes off right this moment. And if it
Mhm.
doesn't start that way, it doesn't count, or I'm forcing myself, or it's wrong somehow. And some of the best sex I've had, especially lately, has started with, yeah, I could maybe, or I'm not sure, potentially. And then we just follow my recipe to get to the point where we've had a really great time, right?
I think I just wanted to add one more thing on the like you only experience your body the way that
Yeah.
you or right, like your partner can't be
Yeah.
um because even when we are talking about same sex, it's like we
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
can have the same parts and
Mhm.
still what I like done to me, you might not like it, right?
Yeah.
I may come in with a certain amount of confidence of like, I know how to do this, right? Because I know what feels really great to me. And I could
Mm,
have a female partner who's like, ooh, actually, no, right? Like,
Mhm.
I still have to
yes.
do the work to learn her body and
Mm-hmm.
what she likes and what actually feels good to her and rhythm and pressure and all of the other things that's like
Mhm.
I think that sometimes we can, coming back to this idea of like our male partner didn't do it exactly like was done in the romance novel.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that
Yeah.
isn't even a fault of like
Mhm.
because he doesn't understand your parts. It's like, no, you like it is on you to
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
communicate what feels good and not. And then hopefully as a partner on the other end of that, you can receive that without any kind of judgment or shame because like I really don't know. Even if
Mhm.
we have the same genitalia, right? Like I don't know how this feels
Totally.
in your body. I don't know what actually turns you on and it can change from day to day. And so like
It
really
can.
just kind of destigmatizing and normalizing that part about like we have to communicate
Mhm.
Yeah.
about it because I don't know
You
unless you tell
don't.
me. Yeah.
And I love what you're bringing up because I mean, I mostly work in hetero contexts, but not always. And so much of this applies in
Mhm.
any form of relationship. And also, like a big part of what I teach people is that your nervous system is a huge part of this. And that's why it might feel one way one day and different another
Mhm.
day, right? Like we have trauma, that's processing in different ways. We have, I'm highly stressed today, so I'm more irritable. I'm in
Mhm.
my luteal, so my pelvis is in a different space, so it's more sensitive to pain. Like this is why it can, perhaps annoyingly so, like shift on the
Mhm.
day to day. And even another example, Becca, that came to mind as you were thinking is as you were speaking is like, so my partner and I were mucking around and I'm still in a place where largely like solo pleasure just gives me a different flavor of experience.
Mhm.
And so my partner, I was getting irritated. He was trying to like work with my clitoris and like because we were able to stop and take a breath and like think about it and just get out of amazing lover mode and actually into like scientist mode a little bit of like what are you touching and where are we at? And we actually realized that like because I have a particular angle at which my hand touches my body when
Mhm.
it's me and
Mhm.
my partner is approaching me from a completely different angle.
Mhm. Mhm.
Therefore, he can't even like come close to mimicking unless I got the idea where I was like, oh, what if we try this where I'm actually laying in his lap and he's behind me and his
Mhm.
arm could mimic my arm. And like we haven't done that yet, but I'm like, we have a whole new thing we can try. Just from going into scientist mode a little bit because
Mhm.
I was even me, right? I was going down the path of like, oh, you just suck at this and this is frustrating and blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, let's break it down and look at what's
Mhm.
actually happening.
Mhm.
And then it's actually very like straightforward what the challenge was for us in that particular situation, right? And same thing on the trauma piece, which we'd have to do a whole other podcast episode about that. But I joke
Mhm.
lately, like my vagina's been very tantrumy, like very upset and uncomfortable when we've been having sex, and also lots of big emotions have come up for me, and most people don't know how to deal with that. So
Mhm.
the people experiencing those emotions don't know how to deal with them. So they squirm, they rush through things. They're like, just stick it in me so we can get over with, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Or they shut down and say, it's over, but they don't know why and they can't articulate it. And partners, on the other hand, get this behavior and don't know what to do with it.
Mhm.
So they either go along for the ride and they're like, okay, all right, well, I'll stick it in you and finish, or
Mhm.
okay, I understand. And then we never resolve that because we don't know what's happening. But that's trauma
Mhm.
showing up. And there's ways to work with that effectively as well. It's just knowing how to do it.
I love all of that. Well, as we're coming to the end of our time together, Sophia, what does your heart know to be true about
Hmm.
this?
I mean, to me, like the theme today has been communication
Hmm.
and like getting brave and vulnerable in that. But also, I think like the biggest thing I would hope to kind of convey to people is that you are not at the mercy of magic libido dust falling from the sky, whether it's today or 6 months from now. You are absolutely capable, together with your partner, of creating the conditions for your libido to want to show up. I call it throwing a party your libido wants to come to.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there is a path forward that isn't me forcing myself and that
Hmm.
isn't me waiting for me to be like dripping wet and horny. And
Hmm.
learning that will put you in a space where sex can be fun, easy, playful, and consistent, and not a thing that you're arguing about all the time, not a thing you're avoiding, not a thing you feel a lot of pressure and guilt about, which
Yeah,
is 95% of what I'm trying to resolve for people.
right. I love that. Erica, what does your heart know to be true?
My heart knows I could listen to Sophia talk about these ideas for hours and hours. I think it's brilliant.
I know. I wish we
And
had more
so
time.
too, when she shares her socials, I'll be following.
Yes.
Um, I love the idea of experimentation, being open to new things. I love the metaphor of the recipe. We're gonna try a new recipe, and we're just like trying to figure that out. And it's probably not gonna go great the first time that we're experimenting. And so, being I think vulnerable, but also that over communication is so key in all of this.
Mhm.
Appreciate you sharing that. Yolanda, what does your heart know to be true?
Well, I could listen to Sophia forever as well. And really, the reminder that I am taking away with me is the statement, at some point, the pain of staying quiet
Hmm.
outweighs the discomfort of speaking up. So um,
Yeah.
that was a big old truth bomb reminder. Yeah. Becca, how about you? What's your heart narrative true?
I am taking away and just really loving this idea that we get to have like different eras in
Hmm.
our sexual life with the same partner, right? Or it
Hmm.
could be different partners, right? But there can be some sort of fun in accepting that like, ooh, this was the Bridgerton era and that was like really fun. And we can let that close. We could come back to it later. We get to explore something new now. And that doesn't mean that we're doing anything wrong. That actually probably is a sign of health. And that it doesn't just because it was maybe one way when we first got together, when we were in our
Hmm.
20s or whatever, that it doesn't have to still be that way. Right? I really love that idea. So I'm taking that with me. Yeah. All right, Sophia, where can people find you?
Yeah.
Tell us about
All
you
the
professionally. Yeah.
things. Yeah. So the easiest place to find me is Instagram, which is at Intimacy After Kids, though I will add the caveat that I'm mostly talking to men there.
Cool.
Um, so all of it's still going to be relevant for women, but I'm specific in that context. Well, men and high libido partners specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're on my Instagram page and you're like, this is not for me, like fair, it's all stuff you should send to your partner. If they're the high libido partner. But then I also have the Sex After Kids podcast, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, and my website, which is just Intimacy After Kids. And the podcast itself is a lot more neutral in terms of just trying to speak globally to like everybody's experience there. So those would be two really great starting points. And for people who are kind of struggling with that, like finding the maybe zone, I call it, in between hot and horny, and I'm having to force myself. I have a free guide. It's called Touch Again Tonight, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
about kind of finding the way to initiate yourself to connection, whether you're the lower libido person or whether you're the higher libido partner who's trying to initiate in a different way so you don't get a no all the time. So I can send you folks the URL for that. It's just Intimacy After Kids / Touch Again Tonight. But I can send you the URL for the show notes. And people can always DM me on Instagram. You can't out TMI me, as I say, too much information me. Like I
That's
am here
great.
for it. And yeah, that's what I'll say there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. What a great conversation with you. I knew it would be a good one.
This is lovely to meet you all.
Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing the show.